We want to start our museum midday by recognizing that the Tongass Historical Museum and Totem Heritage Center are located on the traditional lands of the Tontiquan and Sanyaquan people of the Tlingit First Nations. We're grateful for the opportunity to live and learn here in mutual respect and appreciation.
Hi there, my name is Emilio Miguel Torres. I'm a Seattle-based film director, but I actually grew up in Ketchikan, Alaska, and I own a multimedia production company called Torres Productions that creates a wide range of content for clients, and also our own independent projects like the latter in the Pacific Northwest region.
How has it been having your film selected for the Alaska or the it's Anchorage, right? The Anchorage International
Anchorage
Film
International
Festival.
Film Festival. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's been great honor. We've submitted the latter to over 2,000 festivals, so it's going to be a while till we hear back results from everyone. But we heard back from Anchorage first, and I thought that it was very fitting and awesome that an Alaskan-made film could have an Alaska Film Festival premiere. So we premiered it this past weekend. Obviously, when you're seeing this, it's January, but it premiered in December. And I flew up to Anchorage and I got to premiere it there. It was programmed in a block of other films made in made in Alaska, but those other films were documentary pieces. Mine was the only narrative piece. And it was just really exciting. Before I lived in Ketchikan, my early childhood, I lived in Anchorage too. So it was very fun to come back and kind of piece together my story of my life. And I think Alaska is the most amazing state, and there's obviously a great community of people who appreciate films and appreciate films that are shot in Alaska. So it was really humbling and honoring to have my work part of such a respected film festival that honors not just international film but local Alaskan film as well.
Yeah. So one of the things that really stood out, just watching some of the behind the scenes footage and different things that have been part of your different Kickstarters or community funding events, is just how much it looks like Ketchikan as a landscape is almost a character in your film. Can you talk a little bit about why you chose Ketchikan beyond just growing up here as the location for your filming?
Yeah, I think one, a lot of people, shoot a lot of movies in a lot of different places, but not that many films have been filmed at Ketchikan. And I just truly think Ketchikan is the most beautiful place on earth. So purely from an aesthetic point of view, like having the beauty of Ketchikan in my film was obviously a great perk. But more from the narrative side of it, I mean, my story is, I grew up here, but my story of the latter is also based on, relationships I've had with my own family and relationships that I've seen occur in Ketchikan, because a major theme of the film is how dynamics in families change over time, due to technology, due to aging, due to a lot of different things. And I think that's kind of central to a lot of people in Ketchikan. I mean, when I've shared the film with people in Ketchikan, they've said like they can relate to the themes of the movie. Particularly because the father character and the son character, one of the main conflicts of the son moves away from Ketchikan, father wants him to move back to Ketchikan. And I think that's a kind of a finding, knowing when it's the right time to leave Ketchikan and knowing when it's the right time to stay is kind of a question a lot of, Ketchikanites face. And I just think like Ketchikan's this beautiful island where there's such a great community there, but you also still are an island and you're secluded. And it's always this back and forth of like what's out there, but what's also here. And so a lot of those themes, I think, came out in the film thanks to the aesthetic and kind of tonal atmosphere of Ketchikan.
We are very atmospheric here. That's very true. It's very true. And can you talk a little bit too? I think one of the things that I'm really delighted by is all of the folks who are featured in the film who are from Ketchikan. I mean, just some of the kind of Easter egg guest spots, like having Mayor Dave Kiefer, appear in the film, and just some of those. Can you talk a little bit about including the people of Ketchikan within the film?
Yeah, so I started writing the script for the latter back in 2019, and the original goal was to shoot it in 2020, and then the pandemic happened, so then we postponed it a year. But it was kind of funny because I knew when I first started writing it, I just knew I wanted to make a movie in Ketchikan. I wasn't exactly sure what the story was, but I knew I wanted it to be about a father and a son in Ketchikan. And so I started just working with that. And as I started writing the dialogue, I heard a dear friend of mine, Keith Smith, like I heard his voice when I was writing the words. I hadn't asked him at all if he was interested, but I just heard him. And before I knew it, I wrote an entire script. And when I was writing, I was imagining Keith in the lead role of Arthur without knowing if he had any interest. And then winter of 2019, I reached out to him, shared the script with him, told him my idea, and saw if he would be game. And he was. And I think what's really great with Keith is, if you've gotten to know him, I grew up and he was definitely one of my mentors. He's super involved with First City Players, which I did all growing up. And he's just such a wise person and so fun and so eccentric. And he's such a character. And I wanted to capture that in the film. And he's also an incredible actor, of course. And then, so he was the first person we had, and we had him locked on pretty early. The next person we got locked on pretty early was, I think it was both Catherine Tatsuda and Heidi Poet. Heidi Poet doesn't currently live in Ketchikan, but she's from Ketchikan. And of course, Catherine Tatsuda lives in Ketchikan. And, you know, Catherine's someone who I also had a really great relationship, kind of as a mentor for me when I was a kid, who's a great actress. And I had a role, and I wanted her to represent that role in honor of Ketchikan. And then Heidi, same thing. Like, I always told people the story. When I was a kid, I was in a production of Cinderella that First City Players did. And I was so little, I had no concept of like what was going on. But I literally thought like Heidi Poet in Cinderella was like the same as like a celebrity in like Hollywood, like that, because I was just like, she's the star of the show, like so I think it's kind of cool that, you know, I got to direct her in this movie. But when I was a kid, I literally thought she was, you know, this world-renowned star. I mean, she deserves to be a world-renowned star, but, you know, obviously she was just a local theater star. And then some other people. Jeff Carlson's in the film. He was one of the later additions to the cast, but Keith had worked with him on some theater stuff, and of course he's a great community member as well. And then Connor Wodehouse played the role, which is very fun to work with him because he and I acted together in First City Players shows, and he's played my son before. So it's kind of cool to direct him in this movie about fathers and sons. And there's lots of other cameos in the film, but I guess I should save some of them for when everyone gets to see it.
Yes. And I'm kind of curious and interested too. I know you know, a lot of talent and a lot of help came from Ketchikan as a community too, but you brought in a production team. Can you talk a little bit about that timeline, how long you all were shooting here, and what was it like to share Ketchikan with, you know, folks who'd never presumably been in Ketchikan before?
Right. Well, so, you know, as you referenced before, we did a crowdfunding campaign to make this film happen. I originally was going to do the film on a very low budget. I was just going to fly up, do it myself, maybe bring a friend, but keep it really low key and small scale. But when I had more time to work on it, I realized I really wanted to make it a respectable production. It was also the first film I made after graduating school, so I didn't have support from my school in terms of equipment or facilities. And I also wanted to pay everyone who was involved in the production. So all that adds up costs very quickly, obviously. So I did a crowdfunding campaign. We raised $15,000. And then after we shot the movie, we raised another $5,000 to finish the film. And so basically, very early on, I had a lot of close collaborators that I went to NYU Film School with. And I wrote the script at NYU, so they knew about the script and they knew that I really wanted to do this project, but I don't think any of them really thought that they were going to go to Alaska with me to make it. But one time, right at the beginning of 2020, I called them and I was like, hey guys, I want to bring you all to Ketchikan and shoot this movie. Do you want to do it? And they were so game, and there was such a huge support, and not just supporting the campaign and spreading the word, but also they were troopers spending a week in Ketchikan making this movie. So a lot of the cast was my New York friends. We were here for a week. We flew in 4th of July weekend. We shot for 4 days, and then everyone flew back the following weekend. And, you know, we had some filmmakers from New York. My cinematographer is from California. Me and my girlfriend, who was our assistant director, we flew in from Seattle. So, you know, we were all coming from different places, and we just spent 1 week. And then it was amazing because the cast was local actors, but the crew was a mixture of my best friends from college, as well as some of my childhood friends like Megan Cornwall, Sarah Kuharich, are people who are on our crew who are local Ketchikan people, you know, who have an interest in film, and I got to have them on the crew. So it was literally the best team. It was a mixture of amazing Ketchikan people, also outside people, and it was such an honor to share what I think is the best place on earth with these amazing artists.
Wonderful. Now, I know you touched a little bit on your background, you know, growing up here in Ketchikan and being part of First City Players. Can we do a shameless plug as far as that influence of having what I think is one of the nation's oldest and most continuous community theaters, and being able to like get your grounding in that so early, and how it really influenced your career?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think another big reasons I just wanted to shoot in Ketchikan, other than the fact that I lived here and knew people here, is because I really feel like I need to give back to Ketchikan, and I still feel like I haven't, given back enough yet. Because the thing about Ketchikan is that, it's a small town, but it has such a powerful and supportive arts community, and that's not what a lot of towns get to have. And so growing up, I was really supported and pushed into exploring the arts, and doing First Seed Players growing up, doing art school, their programs exposed me to art in a way that I don't know if I would have had if I grew up somewhere else. And so my whole life, I knew I wanted to be an artist when I grew up, and I was always supported in that, and I had so many opportunities to pursue that. So yeah, First Seed Players is super critical to like who I am as a person, and of course I wanted First Seed Players to be super involved with the latter. And yeah, and what's great is I grew up in Ketchikan. I went to high school in Seattle though, but like all the training that I got from First Seed Players helped me, get into arts things in Seattle, and then that helped me get into NYU, where I went to film school. And literally still to this day, when I'm on set and I'm directing actors for my own film productions, I remember things that, Elizabeth and Claire taught me at First Seed Players about how to tell a story, how to perform. And so they're just the most amazing people. Everyone involved with First Seed Players are the most amazing people. And I'm forever in debt to the arts community in Ketchikan and First Seed Players.
Fantastic. Now, we've kind of talked around the film a little bit. Looking at the latter, just even the summaries of it, it's kind of my favorite parts of kind of Ray Bradbury and my favorite Twilight Zone episodes kind of mixed here. So for people who've never read that summary, can you let us know what to expect for those who are going to watch the latter for the first time?
Yeah, so The Ladder is a sci-fi drama short film about an aging Alaskan fisherman who gets this opportunity to do a mysterious procedure that would let him restart his life. And so the film focuses on the, social, emotional, familial reasons why or why not to do that. And so the film focuses on Arthur, and we see him go through his life, interact with his son, interact with his best friend, and ultimately the film concludes with his decision about whether or not to do the procedure.
So yeah, this feels like you alluded to it earlier, like a teaser for something so much more based in this world that you've created. So what are your plans like for that? Is that something that's still on the table, expanding what the ladder has brought?
Yeah, so currently, post making the short film, I'm developing and improving a feature-length version of the story. But I also think because it has such a distinct world, this procedure and a world where this procedure is possible, that it's such a big story. It could be told in a series. I've explored the idea of doing, like Twilight Zone, an episodic series that's like, okay, imagine this procedure is possible. Now let's explore different situations and how that procedure affects those situations and things like that. But I think my real dream, though, is just to make a more developed and larger version focusing on Ketchikan in the future. And the logistic timeline for that is, we're waiting to hear back from film festivals for the next few months. And we're hoping, once we hear back from those festivals, we can premiere in places, get the right people to see it, maybe get an investor who can give us even more money so we can come back to Ketchikan and make it an even bigger production. And then, from there, sky's the limit. Netflix, Oscars, who knows?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the film festival. So this first inaugural one, this first, selection to be in the Anchorage International Film Festival. What's the response to the film been like so far from that festival?
Yeah, so the festival has awards that they have a panel of judges that they award, and there's also audience choice awards. As of us recording this interview, that award ceremony hasn't happened yet. So from an award standpoint, I don't know if we've won anything, but let's hope so. But even if not, I think the response was really positive. I had this one woman who came up to my dad and I, because my dad was a huge help in making the film happen, and he and I were in Anchorage, and my mom came with as well. and she was a huge help, of course, in the film. And we're standing in the lobby, and this woman comes up and she told us that she saw the film and the ending gave her chills, and that she was like really blown away by the project. And I just had a lot of people tell me that they really liked the film. And so far with who I've shared it with, I think what I'm really excited for about this project is that, you know, it's a cool film because it's kind of a sci-fi, but ultimately at its core, it's a story that just a lot of people can relate to. And the story just asks the question of, you know, as you go through life, how do you navigate changing family relationships? And also, how do you navigate changing technology in the world? And also, how do you just learn to either embrace or forget the past? So, you know, all those questions are very universal themes that a lot of people, I think, can resonate with.
Certainly, certainly. Now, you know, again, you mentioned the film festivals. I don't know if those in the community watching know, but I mean, it costs a lot of money to get your film out there to different film festivals, to actually be able to go and attend. So I know the community has greatly supported, you know, from the Kickstarter and the film to actually filming here. What is the best way for the community and those who really are enjoying the film to continue to support the work that you're doing and getting the film out there?
Well, what's really amazing is that when we crowdfunded for the film, we factored in film festival costs into our budget. So, you know, when we did our post-production fund, $1,000 of that was specifically for applying to film festivals. Because, you know, when you apply to 20 festivals and they each on average are $50 submission fee, you know, it adds up, right? So, you know, that already the community has allowed me to submit to all these festivals, you know, without having to use my own money, which has been amazing. But truthfully, right now, I don't think money is what we need. What we need right now is just people to not forget about us, basically. You know, it's going to be a while before the film releases publicly. So once it does release publicly, having people spread the word, share with all their friends, you know, sending it to all their rich relatives. That's really where the help comes in. But the hardest part with making a short film is, you know, you make the film and then you normally have to wait a year to submit to festivals, hear back, premiere them before it actually releases. And a lot of times by the time it releases, you don't have that initial momentum you had. So the best thing people can do to support the film is just not forget about us and to keep spreading the word and learn about it. And of course, we have a Facebook page, The Ladder 2021 short film. If you find there, you can always message us or post there and see if there's a way you can more directly help, or reach out to me directly on my website.
Fantastic. Well, I know we're not going to soon forget you. Well, I mean, we've certainly asked you quite a few questions. What would you like the takeaway to be for people who watch The Ladder?
I think the takeaway that I want people to watch The Ladder is that, you know, you can't control how the world around you is going to change, and you can't control how the people around you are going to change, but you do always have a choice of how you're going to respond to that and how you're going to move forward. And I think, you know, the fundamental question for Arthur in this film is that predicament. You know, the world around him is changing and there's all these new technologies he doesn't understand. His friends are literally changing. They're literally becoming younger, and his son is not doing what he thought was going to happen. So now he's in the twilight of his life. He can't control anything else. So what can he control? And that's himself. And I think that's a message that ultimately is about life itself. And I think especially as artists, that's kind of, you know, we can't control the world, but we can make art that tells our story and then hopefully maybe positively influences the people who can change the world.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, again, Emilio, I wanted to thank you for, you know, joining us and being part of this museum midday as we, you know, explore contemporary films that are, you know, filmed here in Southern Southeast in Ketchikan just in the last couple of years. So I am so glad that you were able to share a little bit of The Ladder with us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Love if you could introduce us to you all.
Perfect. Should we start off? Cool. My name is Anika Kan Grevstad, and I am one of the writers and co-directors of What We Find in the Sea.
I'm Skye Mahaffie, and one of the producers, as well as production designer and various on-set duties of What We Find in the Sea.
I'm Sasha, and I'm one of the writers and directors of What We Find in the Sea, along with Annika.
I'm Emma Franklin, and I'm a producer of What We Find in the Sea.
And fishing boat knowledge extraordinaire.
And commercial fisherman.
I'd love it if you all could introduce us to the film. So, before we actually show the film to folks, can you introduce it to us? What will we be watching?
Sure. This is a coming of age story set in the fast-paced, intense world of commercial fishing on a purseiner in the waters of Southeast Alaska. So it's really an intimate story of growing into your womanhood in the midst of a very chaotic and wild new space. And it's really fun to hear that you showed it to people who actually go fishing. That was something that was pretty important to us, and part of why we were so grateful to get to work with Emma. She was there on the boat with us so that we were shooting in the middle of the season. So active fishing was happening all around us all the time. And we were really interested in trying to capture that world that we were allowed into for a moment and try and preserve something of the magic of what was going on in front of us.
A limited screening of the film What We Find in the Sea is available on the Tongass Historical Museum's Facebook page and in person at the museum through Sunday, January 9th, 2022. You can find a link in the description. To find out more about screening this short film or upcoming festival showings, visit whatwefindinthesea.com.
Hey, Mia, you made it.
So I have to ask then, how did filming, on the Haida Warrior, how did that come about? How was the boat chosen? What was that connection like?
So the connection was through me. My family has been in commercial fishing for decades, and so I fished on the Haida Warrior before. And the season that we were filming on board, it was being run by my cousin, Nate Salnett. So it was fishing, it was out of Ketchikan at the time that we were on board. And it had been fishing purseiner in Southeast Alaska since it was built back in the 1940s. It was christened I believe the Lady Helen in those days. And in the 80s, it was went through some serious rebuilding and was renamed the Haida Warrior. So that boat is the boat that I've spent the most time on fishing. And so I reached out to my cousin and to the owner and made sure that they were comfortable with having us aboard, but they were so welcoming when we were there. We kind of showed up, and especially the crew, they'd been spending the whole season fishing. They didn't really know what was going to happen. And we showed up and we said, okay, we're here to film this short film. We have a script for you. We have one actor, and the rest of the roles are going to be played by you guys. And it was amazing how much they rolled with the punches and were really supportive and welcoming. And I think they had fun with it. They were, by the end of the season, you can be a little sick of your fellow crewmates. And so I think it was exciting to have some new energy on board.
And one more thing I'll say about filming on the Haida Warrior is that the origin of the story was that when Emma and I were our best friends and have been best friends since childhood. And when we were in high school, she went up to fish her senior year of high school, junior year of high school, senior year. And she would call me and tell me all of these stories from that summer. And it was like a really formative time in our lives. And, we were both going through our own coming of age stories. And I just remembered like hearing all of those stories from Emma and being blown away by it. And so that was the origin of the film. So it was really, really special to be able to go back to the boat that all of those stories came from to make this story.
Oh, that's fantastic. That was, definitely a question I had is how this story came about. So do you want to expand on it a little bit more, or, just how did you decide this was the story you wanted to tell?
Yeah.
I can speak a little from my perspective. So like Annika said, I started fishing in high school, and that was my first time away from home for a long period of time. It was my first really job of any sort, and and so that was like a huge learning and personal growth period for me. It also, I just like was catching fish, and a lot of my time was spent trying to sleep enough and trying to fill my role as a crew member as well. But I definitely, when I had the chance in town, would call Annika and tell her, about these experiences that I never had before. And some of those were about the wildlife that I was seeing, and some of those were about learning to live with other people. And also a lot of those stories were about like being an 18-year-old female on a boat. And I was very, very fortunate that when I was crewing as like a teenage girl, my captains and the crew I was with was always so really made me very comfortable and welcoming, to the extent that you can be comfortable on a fishing boat. But it was never the personalities that I was with that were making any of that difficult. And so I do think that in the story of this film, we made the crew member and the captain a little bit gruffer than my experience, certainly, and definitely not as gruff as I know that other females in the industry have experienced. So for us, it was definitely walking that line between unwelcoming. We wanted the experience to be for Mia, the main character, versus the positive experiences that I had, especially with my captain, Johnny Swigert, when I was starting out on a fishing boat.
Fantastic. Now, this might be an Annika, Sasha question here. Can you tell us how what we find in the sea falls within the scope of Broken Slate Productions? How is this film reflective of the rest of your work?
That's a really good question.
So Broken Slate is a collective of 5 artists. We all met here in LA, and well, I guess some of us went to school together, and then we met Sasha in LA, who's from Santa Fe. And we've made a bunch of short films. We do play festivals every year, and we're really just like, I would say our mission is giving ourselves as young artists and other young artists places to make things without waiting for people to give us permission. And this was like, I think this was the biggest and boldest short film we had made yet. Obviously, flying to Alaska and jumping on a fishing boat with people we didn't know felt like a huge leap into the unknown. But I think that like one of the main things that we've tried to do as a collective of people is being there to support each other and like having each other's backs. And we went into it with confidence because of that. So yeah, I don't know if either of you want to add anything else.
Yeah, I think it's the sort of energy that we built in the first couple of years of running the sort of collective production company. We knew going into this project, like, it was an absolutely wild thing to do, and none of us really questioned doing it. We just did it. Like, we raised some money, we like coordinated everything with Emma and the boat, and then we just like bought plane tickets, like gathered up a bunch of props and costumes and flew to Alaska. And I think we just sort of all trusted in each other, and sort of we knew we could make this happen, and we did. So
yeah, and I think that trust in each other was pretty remarkably important in this. I'm thinking back to it and thinking how much we believed in this project and trusted that it could be done, even when we couldn't see the next step or exactly how it was going to happen, because in terms of the scope of things that we've worked on, it was so much bigger and there were so many more unknowns. I mean, 24 hours before we got there, we learned the boat was going to be in a different place than where we thought. So we had to kind of rearrange everything. And then it turned out that was amazing, because Ketchikan was the perfect place to be filming. We were welcomed with open arms from so many different directions. And yeah, I think at any moment that it felt like, I don't know how this is going to happen, but leap and the net will appear, and it did. And then we'd leap again and the net would be there. And we just kept going until all of a sudden it was a short film.
So, I mean, we see, sets being put out and, working around that active fishing boat schedule. How did that translate into the rigors of filming?
So we filmed, I'll talk about this from the filming side, and then maybe Emma, you can talk about it from the fishing side. But we went into it knowing that we were going to be there while they were fishing. And obviously, like, it's all of those people's livelihood, and we didn't want to get in the way of that. So our plan going into the film was to make those scenes more or less documentary style. And so for the most part, we were just filming the actual crew doing their actual sets and trying to get everything we needed that way. And then we would steal them, the crew members, away for a few minutes in between sets to get little things that we needed on the deck. But then, like, you know, all of the people on board were really welcoming, and they like had me come in for one of the sets, which was very hard. Lead lines are very heavy for me. And also amazingly on board, there was a young woman named Sarah who was about my height, had brown hair, and was super excited about the film. And so for a lot of the fishing shots, she's actually in the set doing it, doing her job. And so we gave her the same color hat and the same color gloves, and she was more or less like a body double for a lot of the fishing scenes.
Everyone looks very similar with the Grundon hood up.
Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, Emma was like our guide throughout all of the fishing. I don't know, Emma, if you want to talk about.
And literal guide. Like, I was filming and Emma had her hands around my waist to yank me out of the way, so that they really, I mean, with open arms, let us get in and film what was happening. And because Emma knows what's happening and can predict where the heavy objects are going to be swinging next, she would, you know, say, all right, we got to go over here. We're going over here. Which gave us, I mean, a remarkable amount of freedom to be filming on board.
Yeah, it was also interesting because we knew we had to work with the Alaska Department of Fish and Game opener schedule. So we knew going into it that we were going to be in Ketchikan for, I think it was around a week, but that would only mean probably that we would get 2 days of filming on the seiner while they were fishing, because we didn't know when the openers were going to be. We had to coordinate getting picked up by the Haida Warrior and then heading out to the fishing grounds, which meant that on the days that we were filming during the openers, we were all really packed in like sardines on that boat, which is added to the close quarters that you experience on a fishing boat. So it was really exciting. And just to jump off of what Sasha was saying about kind of getting into the operation while they were piling gear, while they were actively fishing. We even sent Sasha out on the power skiff during a set, so she could film from that angle as well, maybe like 1 or 2 sets like that. And on the back of the deck, so you could film from behind as the net was getting piled.
Emma was anchoring us down to the boat, holding us on board as we were in the back.
Yeah, so we definitely, we went as far as we safely could in terms of getting the footage and the shots that we wanted, which I think really paid off. And kind of after, and I think Anika could probably speak to this more, but in post-production, after we had filmed, we ended up with just this amazing pile of sort of documentary style footage of the various parts of a set. And so then it became a question of the puzzle of like fitting that together, and how much of it we wanted to be explanatory and accurate to the fishing process versus how much of it we wanted to be more of an artistic representation that kind of spoke to the experience that Mia was having on the boat, as opposed to actually how the seiner functioned. So in post-production, we definitely had some conversations where I would get they would send to me, because I'm not doing the editing myself, I'm not capable of doing that, but I would get sent a cut of the whole thing or a version of it, and I would be like, well, that's not how it works. And then Anika would be like, well, but it's how the story fits together, or it's how like we're highlighting Mia's experience as a first-time crew member.
Yeah, no, so Emma, your own personal experience of being out and fishing and being able to share that with Anika, you guys kind of had that give and take of knowing about fishing. At least, Anika had your stories, but for the other two, was this your first time really learning about those ins and outs of commercial fishing here in Southern Southeast?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was sort of the part I remember the most sort of clearly was we're all the very first set that first morning, we're all sort of up on the whatever you call the higher deck on the boat. And we're just staying out of the way. We're not trying to film, we're not trying to do anything. We're just kind of trying to figure out, and Emma's kind of pointing out this is what happens next, and then they're going to move over here so that the next 48 hours we could be filming the rest of the sets. And we're all just kind of sitting there watching this very synchronized, beautiful, choreographed sort of dance between the crew members. And then this big net full of salmon gets just whoop up over the side and then dumps out on the deck. And we all just were kind of in absolute awe at, like, I just think you've never, until you've spent an experience like this out on a boat like this, you don't think about where your food comes from and things like that. And so at least for me, that was such a sort of eye-opening experience. And I remember we all just kind of looked at each other in awe as, like, literal hundreds of fish get dumped out on the deck every time there's a set.
I'm a desert child who loves the ocean. But I think it was, so Anika and I started talking about this story in about the fall of 2018, and that kind of snowballed and got bigger and bigger. And I am a pretty research heavy writer or creator. So as soon as we were really diving into this world, I mean, we interviewed anybody who would let us, friends of friends, acquaintances, somebody we read about in a book who we just cold emailed to see if we were able to talk with them. So watched videos and read things. So I had some understanding of what we were walking into. But I think sort of like how you could describe the color red for days and then see red and it would be different, experiencing it with different senses. It felt very different being there and witnessing something that I'd seen this big, and then it was 360 all around us. We were far away from anybody else, witnessing nature and the cycle of life and this fishing happening right in front of us.
I'm glad you mentioned that. So can you guys speak to the landscape, or I guess in this case, like the seascape, and the boat, the Haida Warrior itself? What was that importance in helping to tell Mia's story?
I think it's pretty multifold. I mean, I think the ocean is one of the vastest, most unknown ecosystems on Earth. And I think that there's something about coming to grips with how big something can be, how little that can make you, and then how little that is when you zoom out even further. That feels like part of that kind of existential tussle of growing up. So I think that was really important to the story, and just generally the whole area of Southeast Alaska. I mean, the Tongass rainforest, like the biggest collection of old growth forest, how salmon swim upstream, the ways that whole ecosystem is connected to each other felt really important to building that world, to understanding that story, and to some of the questions that you grapple with as you're growing up.
And I think, like, just to bring it like into the film a little bit, I feel like that was a big thing that Sasha and I talked about with the end of the film. We pull away from Mia, and we've spent the whole film like living with her experience and seeing her perspective of this world, which is for the most part like really close in and overwhelming. And then in a way to sort of show her growth, we're like, okay, but look at the world that she fits in. And I think being on location in Southeast Alaska was so important. And everybody who I've shown the film to in LA is like, where is this? This is not in LA, right? And I'm always like, yeah, of course. But it was so important to us to be on a real fishing boat and in Alaska, because I feel like, even in a close-up shot, you see the ocean stretching behind, and it's just like, it makes it feel so real. And yeah. And
I think that ending and being able to shoot that there, you see the ocean stretching off behind, and I think as the film progresses, intentionally, slowly, you start to understand the sets more as they're going on, and then all of a sudden you start to be able to with Mia witness the beauty of that area, and then by the end she's actually able to zoom out of her own myopic view of what's right in front of her to what a magical place she's found herself in.
So we have what amounts to about like two audience questions for you guys. What was catering like on the boat for the production crew? Folks want to know.
It was provided, well, we had a little arrangement. We took our catering budget essentially and bought groceries for the crew for the week that we were there. And then the food was cooked by the boat's cook, Sarah, who is also Anika's body double, and in fact has also had her art shown in Ketchikan. Sarah Dove Aroso, I believe is her last name. So I don't know if your patrons are familiar with her art. She does beautiful cutout figures, sort of Mexican style. Her work.
I'm pretty sure she had a show at the Main Street Gallery with Ketchikan Humanities Council. So
yeah,
we'll double check. Yeah.
Just to bring that connection in, I know that her art has been featured in Ketchikan. I wasn't sure at which venue. So she was the cook on the boat, and she cooked us some delicious meals while we were there, and that was the catering. We ate a lot of salmon.
Yeah, she was, fishing all day, cooking for the crew, and graciously allowed us to eat what she was making too. She's really incredible artist, and I think had such a magical and artistic vision of the world that she was in, that spills out into her art, and also I think wove itself into our film, having conversations about what it was like for her being on this crew during that summer.
Also, more special shout out to her is that I'm vegetarian, and the whole time we were there, she was also making me vegetarian food, which was just so sweet. So yes, I'm very grateful to her.
Well, just the other part of catering is that in this whole, we move locations last minute. We're supposed to be somewhere else. One of Emma's old family friends, Kathleen and Axel, welcomed us into their home with open arms, let us borrow their daughter's car. Kathleen cooked us breakfast we couldn't believe every morning. So that was another piece of our catering, or of our just finding sustenance while making this absolutely absurd project.
Ooh, and one more special shout out to the Pizza Mills peanut butter banana milkshakes. I think that we finally wooed the crew into letting us on the boat by taking them all out for pizza the night before we left for the opener. So
nice. So how many people were in the production crew, or actually came and were part of the filming?
It's us four
Yeah.
who were there and who were on board. I think we came out with a certain amount of tentativity, because we knew that we needed to connect with the crew, to talk with Nate, the captain, and figure out what was allowed. We knew that we needed at least 2 people on board so that Anika could be there and there could be somebody filming her. And then we hope to be able to, like, oh, could we possibly get Emma, and could we get Skye on board? That would be so amazing. And then I really do credit those the pizza and the milkshakes. We sweet talked them into letting all 4 of us on board, which meant we were like sardines, sleeping in the wheelhouse floor, packed in, going the opposite direction of waves of how you usually sleep on a boat, and grateful for every second of it.
And every morning at 4 or 5 a.m. before the sun's up, Nate, the captain, comes and bangs on the door, and he's like, okay, I need this to be a wheelhouse again. And we all roll up our sleeping pads and get out of his way. So it was very tight quarters.
Cool. So this might be a more of the line of the story here, but the other question we had was, from when we meet Mia to those ending shots, how much time has passed for Mia?
That's a good question. That's something that we talked about a lot in the edit, I think. In my mind, it's always been at least a few weeks, because she sees that she's developing some muscles, which, I think takes a little bit of time, but we definitely, I think with all of the montages and the fishing, we're sort of, blending time together. But yeah, I mean, I in my mind, it's been a few weeks.
Yeah, I think it's 2.5 weeks, and we had at one point something that's left on the cutting room floor, and I think very deservedly a waking up montage to kind of fit in more days, and finally wanted to let the the moments speak for themselves as the fishing season pass.
Excellent, excellent. And can you tell us, what has the reception to the film been like?
Pretty delightful.
Yeah.
I think anytime you make something, you're, and especially film, because the timeline is so long and there's so much work that goes on behind the scenes. You're writing, and then you're shooting, and then you're editing, and then after editing, you know, you're working with the composer to get music and working on post-production and replacing the things that went wrong with effects, and so it was such a long time from inception to output. But we had a friends and family screener that was really sweet. I think people from all over different parts of our lives, teachers and childhood friends and college friends all showed up, and that was really sweet. And now we're just starting a bigger festival run. And yeah, I think it's been really sweet. And one of the most fun is talking with people who have any connection to commercial fishing or to fishing, who are like, oh, that felt real for this reason, or that's so fun that you got this in, that there were the call and response of colors, or that there's this something that helps them grab onto that world and have it feel real.
I feel like one of the big things is just people being so excited to see the world of commercial salmon fishing and to see a little snippet of Alaska, because it feels very, very different than the concrete jungle that is LA. And I think like so many people have said like, oh, it just feels so real to be actually like in that world, which I think all comes back to having been able to film it in Ketchikan and on the Haida Warrior, and with like actual people who were the actual crew of the boat. So I think that's been the biggest takeaway for me. And I also feel like we've shown a lot of people throughout the course of the pandemic when we've all been stuck inside our houses. And I know a lot of people have said like, oh, I really felt like this just like transported me off of my couch in my living room in Los Angeles into Alaska for 15 minutes. And I think people have been sort of appreciative of that. So yeah.
So we had our kind of online premiere at the LA Shorts Festival, which is a really awesome international shorts festival. And it was online this year. And so we premiered online. And that was a really great way for anyone who hadn't come to our friends and family screening to start seeing the film. We have another online screening at the Coven Film Festival, which is a film festival that supports female and non-binary filmmakers, which is based in San Francisco, I believe. It's online, so it doesn't really matter where it's based right now. But and then really excitingly, this spring, after this will have come out, we're premiering in person at both the Santa Fe International Film Festival and the Seattle Asian American Film Festival, which is especially cool because Anika is from Seattle and Sasha is from Santa Fe. And so we're getting to kind of bring this film home to our sort of our writer directors, their families and their communities like that. So.
Yeah, and Emma, what was it like then to see some of those stories and things that you'd shared with Anika take form in film?
It was kind of bizarre and really awesome at the same time. Definitely, we had a lot of working on it, and then seeing it come together brought back a lot of those, made me kind of think back to what it was like my first season on the boat. Since I'm still fishing, I still fish every summer on the Haida Warrior, and so my experience of that now is very different than my first season. So it was a little bit like a little time capsule of reminding me of the things that I found interesting or impactful from my first season on the boat. And it was also interesting, like, to see scenarios that kind of, maybe I had heard stories from my mom about when she was fishing, when she was a young woman on commercial fishing boats. And so to see stories that other female fishermen had told being implemented and incorporated into the script was really kind of striking and definitely impactful to me emotionally.
Are there ways that our audience and our community members can support the work that you do?
Yeah. Well, we have a website up at whatwefindinthesea.com, and I believe there is a donate button there if people like the film and want to support our continued application to film festivals and getting ourselves to film festivals and all of that, or future projects that we're working on. So, and then you can find out more about Broken Slate, which is our production company, through our Facebook and Instagram pages, which I think are both at Broken Slate Productions. So yeah, that's where you can find out more about us.
This film could not have been made without the support of a bunch of people in Ketchikan and elsewhere in Southeast Alaska. I mean, when I accidentally ended up in Sitka, like I slept on someone's couch, they cooked me breakfast, made me coffee, really lovely. They drove me back to the airport. And so there's just any film like this where we're on location, it's really impossible to do without just like a really positive, supporting, loving community. And we found that in Ketchikan. And so we're so glad that you're going to be able to show this film off to the community for us. And we hope to come back soon as well and have an even larger experience of some kind with Ketchikan as well. So.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that a little bit, we also made the film through crowdfunding. So from the very beginning, it was a film that was lifted up by our community, and honestly would not have been possible without them. So yeah, it takes a village to make a film.
It takes a whole marina.
Yeah, a harbor.
And I think a lingering lesson that we learn time and again while making this, and that has lasted afterwards, is the power of asking, and also of starting a project maybe before you feel like you're completely ready. Because if you wait until absolutely everything is set, you'll wait your whole life. And yeah, the power of just starting. That if there's an idea, something creative that you want to start doing, just take the first step, start moving towards it. And as energy builds around that, don't be afraid to ask for help from people, because people really like helping. And I think that creativity brings us all together.
Well, I want to thank you all again for, being willing to let us showcase and feature the film so that we could all enjoy it. But also in filming here in and around Ketchikan in southern Southeast, because you're really part of a larger continuum. From the museum perspective, from us, we love looking at these little vignettes, these little slices of life, whether it's a documentary film that's done in our area, or it's a short film like your own. And I know even in those opening sequences where we saw the Haida Warrior, we saw a lot of other familiar boats and scenes and things too. So it's really delightful to be able to see your film along that continuum of other films that have been, shot here in southern Southeast.
We're so grateful to be a part of that group.
You got it. Yeah, it is lovely. I know we really enjoyed it. So I want to thank you guys for taking your time and energy, not only in sharing the film, but in talking with us today for Museum Midday. And we have the links to your website, to Broken Slate, and we'll make certain to share that along with this Museum Midday, so that everyone can check in on the other work that you're doing, and of course show our appreciation for what we find in the sea. So thank you all.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
Thank
yes.
you so much.